All right. I'm going to verify that we're live. I think there's a little bit of a delay. All right. Yes, looks like we're live. Let me tweet this out. Get going real quick. Okay. All right, the view count's going up. We'll get started momentarily.
It's all good from my side, yeah.
Great.
Fortunately, just I'll have my phones.
Yep, just working to get us all on the screen. So I think it's just showing our right now. All right, we might do it without video. It sounds like the audio is working, not getting the video across, but that's okay. We can still have a pretty good discussion even without showing our faces, which is very much okay, I think.
But I think once the power is back on, I can turn the video on.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. This is the very first Super Team DePIN Unplugged event. My name's Tristan, and I'm joined here with Gabe from HiveMapper and Dirk from Kudus. Very happy to have everybody here. It's going to be a really great conversation. So to kick it off, I'll probably have both of you introduce yourselves. So can you share a little bit of your background, what got you into Web3, what got you into the DePIN space, and yeah, Gabe, I'll have you kick it off.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Gabe. I'm the head of operations and marketing at HiveMapper. I've been with the project for about 2.5 years now, since around the time of the network launch in November of 22. For those who aren't familiar with HiveMapper, we're building a decentralized map of the world using crypto as an incentive mechanism to balance supply and demand. So people who contribute to the map by things like mapping with dashcams get honey rewards, and customers who end up using the map, like the largest mapping companies in the world, autonomous vehicle developers, and so on, when they consume map data, it causes honey to be burned. And so it's this closed loop ecosystem. I have a transportation background. Most of our team at HiveMapper is kind of non-Web3 native, coming from fields like mapping or AI development. And we fundamentally realized that crypto rails provided a way to create this incentive mechanism to grow these geospatial networks to global scale and to sustain them over time. So personally, I was at Lyft, the rideshare company, for about 4.5 years before joining HiveMapper. Earlier on in my career, before that, I was a journalist covering the automotive industry and transportation. And so I've always been really passionate about innovation in how we get around our world. And so I was obviously really excited to join HiveMapper with a fresh vision for a better way to build maps for humanity.
Awesome. Dirk, I'll let you take it away with an intro.
For sure, yeah. Hey guys, I'm Dirk. I'm the co-founder, CMO for Qudis. So a lot of people probably know Qudis by the Qudis ring. It's a hardware that we launched last year at the Renaissance Hackathon, where basically it's a whole Solana hackathon, a winning project in DePIN space back in the Renaissance Hackathon. We've sold over 15,000 rings globally. Now, but a lot of people refer us to the Solana ring, but we are actually just more. We're actually a little more than just ring selling companies. So what we does is actually we're trying to revolutionize the wellness space. So you know that a lot of companies like Apple Watch, like Aura, like they've been trying to track your data, and on top of that, you've got to pay monthly subscription fees. But again, as crypto natives, nobody likes to pay, especially when our data has been tracked by a certain company and we don't actually got to own any part of that. So that is essentially the reason why we created Qudis. So through the Qudis ring, the Qudis app, and the Qudis data infrastructure, we're able to actually provide users the ownership as well as the monetization potential of their data. So that will be like wellness data, like your heart rate, your sleep, your exercise, your steps, your calorie burn, etc. But also we are also working with other DeSci projects and trying to power all personal wellness related AI training. So yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in DePIN just in the Web3 space. One of the things I'm really curious about with both of your experiences, especially with coming from the marketing side of things, it's how do you address some of the challenges with communicating these DePIN concepts in general to a mainstream audience, and how does that differ from, say, like your traditional marketing experience, for example, Gabe working at Web2 companies?
Yeah, so I think there's really two sides of most DePINs. There's supply, there's demand. Supply could be, in our case, it's contributors who are, putting dash cams in their vehicles to map the world for other projects. It could be people installing, hotspots at their homes or things of that nature. And on the supply side, I think we have a very, very, very compelling message relative to, Web2 projects that came before us. So for us at HiveMapper, and specifically, we didn't invent crowdsourced mapping. There are, call it 20 years of history that come before us in crowdsourced mapping, whether it's OpenStreetMap, sort of the Wikipedia of maps, which has become a really powerful part of the mapping ecosystem, or whether it's app developers like a Waze. And I think one of the things that was really the inspiration for our project was the fact that for many of these crowdsourced projects where there was no reward or incentive mechanism, the early contributors who really are what makes this project possible, what gets it off the ground and allows it to scale, don't benefit from the rewards of having built this thing the way that the investors and the early employees do. A project like Waze, people think a lot about using the app and reporting. Maybe there's police activity here, or there's a car accident there. But there were also tens of thousands of contributors using a web app to edit Waze's map. And they were doing it because they believed in the vision and the mission of this project, of this startup. And then Waze sold their project to Google for $1.3 billion. And the early investors did really well, the early employees did really well, and they should, because they had put in a lot of capital and a lot of work to make that thing what it was. But the earlier contributors really got nothing. They got a t-shirt at best, and I think I've come across, while working on HiveMapper, a lot of early contributors to Waze who felt really burned by that situation. And I think it's a common story across many Web2 projects, that have basically used their contributors as the product and monetized them, and they don't benefit from what they've built. And so I think on the supply side, on the contributor side, it's a very compelling story. If we build this really valuable thing together, we all benefit from it. If we can all bootstrap this thing to global scale, we've built something really valuable, and we should all benefit from that. I think the demand side with customers is a lot more complicated, but I know I've been talking a while, so I want to turn it over to Dirk and let him share some commentary. But happy to come back to what kind of big enterprises think about DePIN maybe at a later point in the chat.
Yeah, Dirk. Well, I think that's some really great commentary. I just want to really quickly say that I think that this is one of the most compelling things that goes into DePIN is like, hey, everybody who's contributing, you have a voice in this product and you will be rewarded for your contributions, and you know it's going to be something that's empowering for you, and you're not going to get burned in that way that we've seen historically, and especially in the case that you mentioned, Gabe. So yeah, Dirk, what are some of your thoughts? I think there's a little bit of audio. I'm not sure if you reconnected with.
All right. If Dirk's not back on, then I could share a little bit more thoughts. And Dirk, please interrupt me when you're back on, so I don't dominate the conversation. But I have thoughts also that I can share on the customer side of things, because for any of these DePIN networks, there's an end customer. In our case, that's the largest consumers of map data in the world. Map makers, autonomous vehicle developers, rideshare companies, logistics companies, they have a data set, but they need to keep it fresh. And so they buy map data. And I think a lot of people expect that, because crypto is a very, it's an emerging kind of, frankly, like a bit more of a Wild West type of space. And frankly, there have been some bad actors in that space that have harmed its reputation in the mainstream. I think a lot of people think that those kinds of big enterprises would be very wary of DePINs. And I think we've been pleasantly surprised to see that that's not the case. There's maybe a little bit of heightened suspicion when you first connect of is this project real? But what we've found is if you're building a real product and you can deliver the goods, they're happy to engage with you. How you generate that product is less important than do you have the goods? And so we've been really pleasantly surprised. And I think the proof is in the pudding. We've signed up 3 of the 10 largest mapping companies in the world to use our data. We have customers across logistics, rideshare, autonomous vehicles, automotive, and not one of these kinds of deals has been kind of held back by the fact that this is a DePIN and that there's crypto incentives. And so I think that's a really great sign, and something that we didn't know when we set out, right? We didn't know if that would be a deal breaker for people, if they would be suspicious of the crypto incentives element. And the fact that they aren't has been one of the most positive learnings that attests to the power that DePIN can have in breaking through to the mainstream.
Yeah, I think that's a great testament just to the power of what you're able to deliver. Versus, I think one of the issues could be also hey, if you're pitching to somebody or a company, you're including all these blockchain Web3 buzzwords, versus saying, hey, we're building this amazing tool, this amazing hardware device that's going to allow people to capture live map data, and we can provide a really valuable source of data to all these companies who are looking for this data. That's what they care about at the end of the day, is hey, can I get this useful data and utilize that in our products? So I think it's such a big thing. And I was gonna say, Dirk, I don't know if you have if your audio is working, I think we're still having a little bit of technical difficulties, but yeah, I think the same thing. When the audio is working, just feel free to cut in, and I'll let you know. So,
I'm happy to keep talking. Let's keep it going.
For sure. Yeah. Do you have any more thoughts, Gabe?
Oh, I've given my piece on that. I'm really bullish on both the supply and demand side. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great, because yeah, I am too. I get really excited about it. So just hearing about it just gives me more energy. Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about any patterns of success in product launches, because I know that there's a lot of DePIN projects that want to have success. They want to be able to build these products that leverage, kind of this distributed hardware architecture, where a lot of people are able to contribute to achieving some common goal, whether it's maybe offering compute power to train AI, or decentralized wireless networks, and so on. But what are some of the things that you have observed in successful DePIN product
Yeah.
launches versus, say, any projects that are struggling to gain traction?
Yeah. So I think the same dynamics that are related to success in Web 2 are present here, because ultimately you're building a real product for a real customer, and you're simply using DePIN mechanics as a way to generate that product, right? And so I think that the kinds of things that a venture capitalist outside of Web3 would look at are still relevant. So when I say that, I mean like TAM, total addressable market. Is this actually a large market? I think there are going to be cases when a DePIN project unlocks some capability that is like, so different from what is possible today that it is a completely brand new, genre defining product. But in the vast majority of cases, it is a disruptive alternative to an existing product that exists in the market with some unique benefits that make it better. So in our case, it's the freshness of our data. We see roads much more often than Google Street View because it is a distributed project. And so that freshness is the core thing that our customers are looking for, that we have fresher data than they can get elsewhere, and that's valuable, right? In the case of a project like Helium, it's the fact that they can get this penetration all over parts of the city where it might be really hard to install enough cell towers to meet that demand, and that's a unique
Hey guys, you able to
capability.
hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just finish my thought quickly, and then I'll turn it back to you. I'm glad you're back. So I think like the TAM piece is really important. If there isn't already a big Web 2 industry or dominant player that's doing kind of something kind of similar to what you're doing, but you're going to do it better, then I have real questions about like, is this going to succeed? And so spaces like telecom and mapping that are huge, tens to hundreds of billions of dollars a year industries are much more ripe for DePIN than kind of like new types of data that there isn't really a big market for today. For instance, like I think a lot of people are saying, well, we can connect a network of all of these devices out in the world. Okay, is there a market for the data that they generate? Is there a big Web 2 company that you're going to do better than that's already out there today? If not, I have real questions about the success there. I think that's probably the biggest point that I would make about DePIN. DePIN dynamics are powerful, but they don't create demand for the product that you're building. You have to build something that the market is in need of.
So Dirk, if you want to step in,
Yep.
love to hear your thoughts as well.
Sorry. I mean, I don't think I've heard like the question.
Yeah. So just discussing patterns in successful product launches and like what would determine success versus maybe struggling to gain traction as a newcomer in the DePIN space.
Okay. I think it's for us. It's a lot about well, I think what separates DePIN product from other type of crypto project is that you're working with real devices, right? Either in the case of HiveMapper, either in the case Helium, Mobile Helium, or Qudis, we're working with real product and real person. So again, I think if you're dealing with hardware, it's always a lot harder for new companies to chip in, because first of all, it's heavy investment upfront. Second of all, it's like you've got to have a lot of a huge team in terms of customer support, in terms of logistics, etc. But at the same time, once you're able to present the hardware to your target clients, it's a lot easier to explain to them what this does. So I recall a few cases where we're going to different countries. I mean, the wellness tracking devices like Apple Watch, like Whoop, like Aura, has been very popular in the recent years, especially in the developed countries like the States, like in UK, like in Singapore. But if you go into countries like Japan, Korea, maybe lesser people knows what these type of devices actually does. So we were able to present them with the Qudis ring. We were able to tell them like what the ring tracks, how it works. We were able to show them the Qudis app, and then we were able to actually tell them the vision of owning and potentially getting a reward on your wellness data. So that's some good and bads working with something like a DePIN project. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if that perfectly addressed the question, but that's just that's what's the takeaway from my side.
Yeah, it's good to get your insights on there. I'm gonna try to see if I can do something here, changing the with the backgrounds, but doesn't seem like it's working right now. So yeah, the next thing I really want to talk about is how community marketing plays a factor in DePIN projects versus, say, other Web3 projects and other Web3 communities. Um, so yeah, basically it's like you see different types of marketing patterns within community outreach, within forming these communities, whether it's in like Discord or Telegram, X, and so on. What are some of the unique approaches you take as a DePIN company to build your community and build around that? Yeah, Gabe, you can start.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of the channels and strategies are very similar because Web3 is a like a way of life that has its own norms and patterns, and people like to do certain things in certain places. And so yes, we have a very active Discord. The main social media channel that we are active on is what we still call crypto Twitter, even though it's X. We follow a lot of the same patterns as other Web3 projects, but I think ultimately there are a lot of differences in which tactics are going to be most successful in building a sustainable long-term DePIN network. I say that for a few reasons. I think one is that if you're building a successful DePIN network, the value of that network is going to steadily grow and grow and grow over time and ramp up to something really valuable. And so a lot of the tactics that frankly, I think a lot of projects in Web3 take of like, we're going to do this massive marketing blitz, KOLs, questing, points campaigns, so we can do an airdrop to try and like get a lot of attention, get really big, have a successful TGE, and often, frankly, a lot of them are down only from there. Like that's completely counter to what a successful DePIN will look like, because our map is much richer and more valuable today than it was when we started and launched the network 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. The amount of reward that's being generated for contributors should be going up over time as there are more contributors in the network contributing more and more valuable data, and there's more and more customers using the data. And so I think having this big explosion of initial interest is not really the best tactic. You want to steadily grow over time so that you're matching the amount of supply, the number of contributors to the network, with the amount of demand for the underlying product. And I think there are a number of examples that we've seen in DePIN that show the downside of growing too big before you've really found product market fit and you have customers who are consuming the data. And so I think, in our case, we've been very focused not just on acquiring as many drivers as possible, as many mappers as possible. We would have taken a completely different set of strategic decisions if that was the goal, but rather on finding the right kinds of contributors who have the right daily patterns to be able to generate lots of high value map data and earn lots of rewards and feel very happy with their decision to participate, so that we can, with a relatively small community to I think a lot of Web3 projects, generate a huge amount of value that allows us to onboard all of those Web2 type companies that I mentioned earlier. I think it's very, very different, just because of the nature of networks. They get more valuable as you grow and onboard more people steadily over time.
Yeah, Dirk, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with Gabriel. So there's one term in the DePIN space, and that a lot of investors or big players look at it. That's the annual recurring revenue. So that means that basically how it's the revenue of your infrastructure. So I I totally agree with Gabriel's part where it's important to actually test out the product market fit to start generating revenue on not only the device setting side but also the data or infrastructure side. If you prove that to people, then more people is going to join. But also I think in terms of the initial marketing approach, I think one of the key things that we feel like project like HiveMapper or Qtis that is different from other crypto projects that we don't necessarily focus too much on wealth marketing. So like if you're selling nodes, if you're selling an NFT, or if you're selling if you're like a DeFi protocol, then a lot of I would say most of your volume might be generated by whales, or because like whales are able to contribute to a lot to the TVL. Whales are able to they're very influential. But for in the case of our projects, it doesn't necessarily help because every person can only generate as much data. Like in order to create this robust, like we are always collaborating with communities that are more active, but that have that appeals to the mass. So that's something that I think a DePIN project, especially like HiveMapper or Qtis, is different from other crypto projects.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like having a lot of capital to deploy doesn't make you a better mapper. Like you can only contribute as much map data
Exactly.
as you generate in your daily life. I think the one exception to that rule is that a lot of the growth of our network has been driven by these very entrepreneurial, what we call fleet managers, who they have enough capital to deploy. So they buy a bunch of dash cams and they recruit drivers to effectively scale their impact, scale their rewards, because they have capital in excess of what they can actually deploy in their own vehicles. That's an exception that's like unique to us. It probably isn't relevant for a project like Qtis, but it's something that is more common on some of the other like node deployment projects. And I think that's one of the real superpowers of DePIN is the way that like you can build a fleet or your own kind of your own node network, so to speak.
Mhm. That would be like similar to the gaming guild approach a few
Yeah.
years back in the days where as a gaming you buy the NFTs, you deploy them, you rent them out to the gamers, and basically have them trying to earn up on the rewards and share the rewards with you. So I think we were also launching similar programs. We're also
Yep.
talking with similar guilds and communities for sure.
Yeah, and I think you could even compare it to just classic mining, like Bitcoin mining. If you have enough capital to deploy, you can mine in lots of locations where you have, the right electricity prices and so on. And so there are ways for people who have excess capital to support the project even more and receive even more rewards as a result, which I think is really powerful for DePIN.
Yeah, I think
Definitely.
that's really interesting. Like let's say you have a fleet of trucks you're operating, you could just add in HiveMapper probably pretty easily to the dashboards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of our most powerful growth channels is smaller commercial fleets. They just put a dash cam in 10, 20, 30 vehicles, and commercial fleets are out there driving all day. So they generate a ton of data and a ton of rewards relative to someone like me who drives a mile to the train station.
Yeah, this gets interesting because I also want to talk a little bit about this dynamic with bringing in people because they want to support the physical infrastructure aspect, they want to contribute, they earn rewards for their contributions, and this is like a really unique part of the DePIN. But there is like token aspects that need to be considered here, and so with these like projects generally being pretty device centric or really hardware centric, how do you balance marketing both the hardware and the token aspects of the project? Is it even relevant to talk about the token components? Is it mostly just focused on like, hey, the hardware side?
Do you want to start on this one, Dirk?
Yeah, sure. I can start. I wouldn't say we put too much focus on token at this moment because we've yet to launch any token. I think most of our focus is still on the product side, And we always believe that if you have a product that fits the market, that actually generates um, some value other than crypto rewards, you do fine in the space. But when it comes to like, if you're a, if you're trying to do a TGE, if you're trying to do exchange listing in a immediate future, then maybe like within a couple of months, then yeah, you do have to think about the tokens, their utilities. You got to think about um like what's the think of the token as one of your product as well. But I think we have like we so from the very beginning we have this point system implemented where we just tell people to if you use the ring, if you open the Kudis app, if you finish the daily quest, if you compete in the social challenges, you'll be getting points, and points will turn towards token TGE. But we've never tell people too much about the token, or the utility of the token, or the or like the exact TGE amount, or anything like that. But I think yeah, as we are approaching our TGE mark, we just set it to like in between Q1 to Q2. I think the more stuff on the tokenomics will be revealed. It's gonna be more on the token will be like the backbone of the Kudos data marketplace infrastructure. So yeah, please stay tuned for that.
Yes, I think we at HiveMapper do very, very little marketing of the token. You know, we've you know, in public statements, you know, our CEO, myself, we say things like, you know, like the token is not your product if you're a DePIN founder, because ultimately the only source of sustainable value for a DePIN project is building like an actual product that is valuable to end customers, that they're willing to pay for, that is bringing like inflows of capital from outside Web3 into Web3, instead of just circulating around the capital that is within Web3 from one project to another based on speculation. Like that's not sustainable. I think the last couple of weeks, if there have been any time, it has shown that that is not the way to grow Web3. And so we do very little marketing, very little emphasis on, you know, the Honey token as a product in and of itself. It is the incentive mechanism that aligns everything. And if the product is really valuable and a lot of map data customers need the product of the HiveMapper network, then a lot of Honey needs to be, you know, acquired and burned, and that creates a lot of value, and that value can be shared among anybody who has Honey, right? But I think we don't do a lot of marketing around it. I think the key, you know, there are of course important things for DePIN founders to be thinking about in this area to like to set themselves up for success. I think things like the emissions for contributors, and what are you rewarding on what timeline? That's really important. Things like your unlock schedules for the people who are, you know, putting in valuable capital and labor to make these networks possible. That's really important. And I certainly wouldn't say we've gotten everything right ourselves on that as a project. But I think the most important thing for a DePIN is creating the right incentive structure for the contributors who make the network possible. You know, in our case, it's all of the Honey that is earmarked for contributors to be emitted on a weekly basis. The most important thing is making sure that that is rewarding the right activities, that you're not just being, you know, you're not just being targeted by a bunch of airdrop farmers and bots who are not going to bring you any long-term value, that the contributors you do have who are like good intentioned, serious contributors are being rewarded for the right things. You know, in our case, you know, we want to make sure that if you're covering lots of new roads that aren't being mapped, that you get rewarded really well. But theoretically, you could imagine someone just driving in a circle over and over and over again, doing tens of thousands of kilometers, but that's completely useless. And so the rewards need to reflect that, right? I think making sure that you understand the product you're creating and what activities drive value to it, and rewarding those activities and not rewarding things that don't, that's by far the most important thing. And if you've done a good job of A, defining the product you're building, and B, rewarding the things that are inputs to a successful product, then all good things flow from that. And you can have success without, you know, trying to get a bunch of people to shill your token so that people buy it. That's ultimately like, that's not what defines long-term sustainable success.
Can I
Absolutely.
chip in a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely, Dirk. Take it away.
So I think yeah, in like the major utility for the token, there are a few things. The first one is, of course, rewards the core contributors, like what Gabriel has been saying. But the second thing is that, like, well, especially in bull markets, token is a way for marketing. Like a lot of people actually start to realize, know about your project if your token performs a lot well. So, um, in this case, it's also a marketing tool, right? But again, it
True.
all comes down to a very good product, because the product is what keeps a company more sustainable.
Yeah, it's certainly true that the token is a form of marketing. If it's performing well, you just see a really strong influx. You know, I know for us at HiveMapper, you know, about this time last year, there were people selling HiveMapper dash cams for like $2,000 on eBay, and it was crazy. And it was not setting up the project for long-term success, because ultimately, if people are like, you know, chasing like Lambos and rainbows and these big dreams, they're inevitably bound for disappointment. We see so many people disappointed in Web3 by like chasing these big dreams that are impossible to fulfill. And so that's why I say, like, we've been very, very focused on just building a fundamentally sound project that real customers want to buy, and all good things flow from that. And frankly, a lot of people don't like that approach. A lot of people want, you know, rainbows and big promises and big dreams. You know, that's why a lot of people are here. And so I think sometimes you have to disappoint people. But I think part of that's part of the calling of DePIN, is that you're doing this to build that sustainable long-term project, and you have to stay committed to that, even if you pay the price for it in other ways.
Yeah, I think that's a really, I think that's a big part of what I see in the industry. Is there's just so much pressure to release a coin, like, release your token, get funding through like tokens, get people buying your token. And yeah, I guess this is like a concern. It's really good to hear from both of you, because I know for a lot of people who are building things, this is always like a point of stress, and especially when you're really early on, it's always like, oh, should I put more focus on the token so I can try to raise some money early?
Yeah, and I think
that's
I'll just make one more quick point on this, and I'll I'll stop talking so much. I think part of what's really challenging, I've seen a number of early projects fall down this trap. Once you start prioritizing the token as your product, it's very hard to undo that. I see projects where they, you know, when faced with a decision between, you know, do we build the underlying tech that makes our product really valuable to end customers, or do we set up these elaborate, you know, governance and a whole quote unquote utility for their token, but they don't have a whole lot of utility for their product, frankly. And I think that's a really bad position to be in as a founder. And it's unsustainable. And that's a mistake.
Yeah, Dirk, I don't know if you want to build on that.
Yes. So the key here, I think, is how you balance your like with token. You probably like I mean, as a DePIN project, you probably want to attract. You want to convey the message that about your infrastructure, about your vision, and I totally agree with Gabriel, where the vision is not going to make you a millionaire. It's not like pumped up fund where millionaire are made in days. This is not the vision that you should be conveying to your to your audience. So so that's why it's really crucial to balance out the points where you create enough hypes with your token, but again, you don't try to convey to people convey message to people where they just buy your token and they expecting to get rich. They've got to use the product, and the product they've got to start realizing the value behind the product, and they might be able to make a living out of using the product, but they shouldn't expect too much.
Fair. So face reveal. I just face revealed this. Figured out how to take off the overlay. So segueing from this a little bit, I'm kind of curious into what both of you think at these different stages of a project. What different approaches do you take to marketing the product from your initial building to like launching on mainnet and scaling the operations? What kind of changes in your messaging across different stages of a project's life cycle? I was gonna say, I don't know, Dirk, you want to take it first? Or?
Yeah, sorry, what was the question again? I think the signal isn't that well here.
Oh yeah, that might have been from my end. I think I've had some little signal issues. What approach? How does your approach vary to marketing your product as your project progresses through the product lifecycle?
For us, it's still, I think we're still early, so so we don't have to talk to care too much about to think too much on this. For us, it's still like the 0 to 1 phase. I would say, like the 0 to 1 phase is still like you're still trying to survive, make a name for yourself, but the most important, you're still trying to survive. So from the very beginning, we know that revenues from hardware sale is always or revenues in general, not only from hardware sale but also from the data infrastructure, the data marketplace is the key to our survival. And if we're able to survive over a long period of time, sustaining over the bearish and bull market, we'll be able to make a name for ourselves, and that's where we'll be more suitable to talk about the one to the growth stage from 1 to 10.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think in the very early stages, you're selling a vision, right? Like your marketing is very vision oriented of like, why does this product need to exist in the world? Why are we building this? How is it going to work? You know, what are the benefits for you as a contributor for participating in it? And I think over time, as you have more product market fit, it transitions much more toward marketing the progress of the network so that people can see that it's on this trajectory toward changing the world in the way that you set out to do, that that you're on track toward the vision that you've been sharing all along. And so I think if you look at HiveMapper, you know, what we focus on a lot more, you know, as we're into like year 2, year 3 of the network, is the growth in coverage of the network. We are now the fastest growing mapping project of all time. We've mapped 31% of the world's roads. Like that's really powerful because it shows that this method of mapping works, like it's scalable. And we share a lot about the traction that we're getting on the customer side. I think, in fact, if you go look at our socials in like 15 or 20 minutes, you're going to see a little bit more on that. You know, we share a lot on, you know, customer wins and, you know, oh, we just added this other, you know, big publicly traded company, billion-dollar revenue company, because ultimately that is the real measure of whether the product is going to be successful long-term and is going to generate that sustainable value. And so I think, yeah, that's phase 2. And I think we haven't gotten to phase 3 yet, where this thing is like really massive, is used by everyone. And we're going to have to do a lot of thinking on how do you shift your marketing when you get there.
And so at that point, does like focus more become like, hey, how do we just, people who are totally, completely unaware of our product, of even Web3 or DePIN or anything, how do we get these people to start using the product? That's that stage.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, just adding a little bit more. So from 0 to 1, you've got to always look closely at your budget. So you don't you know, like marketing is actually can be very, very expensive, or it can be really efficient, right? So we focus a lot more on efficient marketing. Like we have that means like you don't just go out there work as every influencers. You're very selective with the people you work with. That also means that you're not doing crazy amount of airdrops to people or giveaway campaigns, but most of them are towards your growth goals in the very beginning. But once that stage has been passed, or for example, if once you've been you've been raising another round of money, or if you actually are able to successfully list your token on one of the large exchanges, then I think it's more about a branding game where you start to think about how I can onboard users from other ecosystems or Web2 users. And then that's where you can start to test out like Web2 ads and stuff, like do a larger ads campaign, like a part or like have your logos branded on some of the largest most vision attracting places like sports arena or something. But that's a long way for us still.
Do and thinking about getting your products out there and like into the world, into educating some of these users, even now and also down the line, what role do you see education playing in your messaging and how you communicate with any potential customer and user?
Want to start, Dirk?
Yes, I can start. For us, it's always the key, right? People, I'm pretty sure like most of people don't know how valuable their data is. Like how for example, how much their data can be sold, if they're collected by a certain company, and how much money they should be getting out of those data. None of them know about that. So so the key here is you gotta keep preaching about the value of the data, how it is important, not only the monetary value, but also why it is important to have a decentralized database and how that powers up all type of researches in different categories in different countries in niche markets, or how that powers up the development of personal AI agents. So that's so we always know that spreading the vision, education is the key, and that is why we're trying to whenever we go, we are trying to. The first thing we do is we try to educate people about our vision and why it is important to them.
Yeah, I think that one kind of like mental framework for the messaging that I think is really powerful for DePIN, because you are typically, trying to disrupt some existing power structure or economy, is that your product needs to both show people that we are moving toward something that is worth moving toward, and moving away from something that we don't think is the way things should be. In our case, it's very, very clearly defining ourselves in opposition to Google Maps. Like we use that example over and over and over again. The way that your data is harvested and monetized, and you get nothing other than like the ability to use their app. The fact that they get to decide when the world gets mapped, and when they send out their mapping vehicles, and they can go years and years and years before they return. And like places like the developing world have like way worse maps because they just some product manager in Mountain View doesn't think it's worth sending a mapping vehicle down there, that it doesn't pencil out for them. Like those things are bad and wrong, and we can do better. And I think it's important that the marketing shows a positive vision of the future, but also defines itself in opposition to what exists today, and creates some urgency around why we need to replace those existing structures.
I personally am very anti-Google. Definitely do everything I can to de-Google. It's so impossible when you actually try to de-Google that you're like, oh my gosh, they made Android. How do you get rid of that? It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. But like to this speaking long term, like these players are super, super dominant in the space. So I mean, they're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. How, and
Of
this
course
kind of
not.
goes actually to both of you. How would you sell data to these companies? Would you partner with these companies, or is there any opportunity in the future for that, or is it like a no deal, no way would we ever sell anything to Google?
The HiveMapper network is open, and anyone can consume data on equal terms. And that is the principle, that is the defining principle. And so I don't think there's anything stopping them from buying it. And they might not want to because HiveMapper talks trash about them all the time, but they could. And I think the vision of making maps fresher based on all of our contributions that we get rewarded can be fulfilled no matter who at the end of the day is using that. Any developer can use the data that we have generated, and they're rewarding us when they use it, right? Like that would feel fair to me if instead of harvesting data from all of our smartphones and giving us nothing, if a company like Google had to now buy that data from all of us that we've contributed to them. That would feel fair. And we may not like everything that they build with it, but that's not our decision to make. It's open. It's meant to be for anyone who is willing to pay fairly for it.
Yep. In our case, it's also transparency, fairness. It's always the key because if you're launching the marketplace, decentralized marketplace where everybody got the same chance to purchase the data from the users, and as the middleman, we only take a few commissions, but essentially everybody can actually get access to the data if they pay. So that could be like university research lab, for example, where we've been talking with Singapore, in the US. They've been really interested in looking into the real human data that we've been collected. Um, that could be insurance companies, that could be medical companies, that could be AI agents, or if you think about this, that could also be like other people that are trying to market their product to your audience. So, but it's always a fair game.
So the idea is returning the ownership of your data to the people who are making the data and generating the data in the first place.
The ownership and the rewards associated with the data, the value associated with the data. Yes.
How do you think this affects like going forward? So this is very, as we're all kind of aware, this is very ambitious to totally completely reshape the way that data ownership exists in the modern world. This modern world that just the data grows exponentially. The usage of that data to build products and build platforms that we're using in everyday life, that's always going to be building exponentially. How do you see like this playing out as we move forward into the future and adoption grows? What are some of the trends that you see emerging in the DePIN space and going in that direction?
Gabe, do you want to jump first?
So I have maybe an unconventional opinion on this, and one that I think some people in DePIN or Web3 may not like. And it's that if DePIN is as powerful as we think it is, and I think it's very powerful, I think it could be as disruptive as the gig economy 10 or 15 years ago, this new form of capital formation that changes the way that we build big infrastructure. If it's as powerful as we think it is, I think that incumbents from Web 2 will realize that and start to tap into it and leverage it. Companies that have distribution advantages, companies that have capital advantages. And so I think some of the largest and most successful DePINs I think will inevitably thrive. But I think there may be cases where the existing players kind of co-opt the movement a little bit. And I think that would be sad in some ways if they're not committed to the same vision and ethics and mission. But I think it would also it could be a real positive for the world as well if more of our infrastructure in the world was built in this way. Ultimately, no matter who it is who builds it and why it is that they build it, whether it's because they really believe in the vision or whether it's because they see it as a way to build infrastructure and maintain it more efficiently, like if people are being rewarded for the data that they generate, are able to improve the infrastructure in their local areas, to get better maps, to get better wireless coverage, whatever, that would be a win, right? And I think it may be a Pyrrhic victory. But I think if DePIN is really powerful, that will end up happening, and we will have some real debates around that as a community.
Yep, totally agree with Gabriel on this. So I think this is it's actually a very positive loop where the use the first initial users they've been using the product, they see the benefit of using the product, they've been contributing their data, and I can see a loop where, and then their data in turns to be feed into for example, to be fed into AI personal coaches that actually provide valuable insights to these users, and that would attract a better a larger audience base into the community and start using the device. So it's this is this will be the positive loop that will be created by DePIN product. And again, I think at the time when I was in the Consensus Hong Kong, I was at a DePIN panel where I think one of the panelists mentioned something where he imagines in the future there's this blind everyone at their home has this black box where it's all inside the box. It's all DePIN product. It's like decentralized Wi-Fi. It's like decentralized thermometer. Um, w- uh, I can imagine that that state of environment in the future. But instead of a black box, it's like DePIN could be everywhere in our daily life, or let it be like hive when you're driving, hive mappers, when you're exercising, kutis, when you're at home enjoying your shows, that'll be like helium, mobile, etc. It can be anywhere, and it can be very seamless. And I think we are already at a point where we actually generated enough traction to make Web2 companies noticing us. So in our case, I think Aura has been reaching out to us. So like this is they've been noticing us, although we were still pretty early in the stage. But I think once these companies they realize this is a new, more efficient model, they'll be starting copying that. They'll be making more efficient or competitive product for the users. And overall, that's a huge win to the human to the entire human race.
Absolutely. Yeah, really amazing to hear both of your insights on that, because I think it's one of the things I'm really curious about in the future is actually this what you were just saying, Dirk, and it's like these relationships between Web3 and Web2 companies. And Gabe hit on this a little bit earlier, and it's interesting to see because again, like no, every business was once a startup. In most cases, every business was once a startup. They always start off with one track, and then it changes and changes, and they have to adapt and learn and grow. And then they develop based on their experiences, their surroundings, and the nature of the market. And it's interesting to think about, how does this develop in the DePIN world, in Web3? Do these companies become so big that the competition becomes a lot more fierce with smaller companies? Do they allow them to come up? With the existing Web2 companies, do you form partnerships? Do you talk to them? Do they try to build a product that outcompetes your product? And what does this look like in the future? Like with the competitive forces, I think, yeah, it's definitely, well, nobody knows really, but it's just like, how do you account for this in today, I guess?
I think I can go first on this. So it depends on like you gotta realize what's your edge, right? Like whenever you're trying to fundraise, one of the things that investors are trying to ask you is how do you outcome? What if the industry giants enter noticing that you've been doing it, they've been copying your model, and what you're gonna do, right? This so at the very beginning you got to think about your age, whether your niche market or your edge over them. So in our case, I think, well, we've built a solid supply chain. I think we're very crypto native in terms of designing the whole business line. We react very fast, but more importantly, um, I think we understand a lot more about community, and so that's some of our edge that we've been trying to tell people. But you've always got to build a lot more. You got to move a lot faster on your edge. Otherwise, people are going to catch up eventually, and especially for those companies that have capital edge or that have edge in a distribution channel. If they come into the space, then it might be a lot harder for startup companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing, you know, these are like very important and like interesting conversations to have, but ultimately like execution is the only thing that you can control. You don't know how things are going to evolve in years to come. You can't spend too much time thinking about it. You just need to like execute and just like knocking it out of the park with building your product and selling it to customers. And so we have to stay focused there. And I think ultimately doing a good job of that and having a defensible moat, whether it's a technical edge or anything else, is the way that you protect yourself against that kind of competition in the future. And so I think, for instance, in DePIN, there's been a lot of debate around like commodity DePINs versus bespoke DePINs. Like, should you just use commodity hardware? Should you develop your own hardware? And I think like clearly commodity DePIN scales faster. You could just use any smartphone. It's like you can scale very fast, but that also means you have like no defensible moat. You don't have any special technical capabilities that the competition don't have. And so in our case, like we've developed like what we really believe is the best mapping machine in the world, like a dash cam that is specifically designed to meet the needs of mapping companies. There is nothing else like it. No smartphone can do what this does. No consumer dash cam can do what this does. And so it's very unique. And then we also have, you know, what we call our map AI, our capabilities to extract map data from street level imagery, both through edge processing, you know, on device, as well as in the cloud and with a human in the loop, like AI training and map data annotation and auditing. Like all of those are capabilities that are hard to build and incumbents don't have in many cases, that, you know, commodity hardware does not have in many cases. And ultimately that's your moat. That's what's defensible. That's what makes it hard for an incumbent to come in and say, we're just going to do exactly the same thing. But if all you're doing is basically like, if your only innovation is that you use the DePIN model, that's not so defensible because anyone can use the DePIN model. And if they have better distribution or they offer better rewards, they'll blow you out of the water.
Dirk, do you want to say something real quick?
No, I think that makes a perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely amazing insights here. Well, we've hit time. I want to thank both you, Gabe, and you, Dirk. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you sharing your insights on this wide variety of topics. It's been super great. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Thank you to all the viewers. Well over 400, so that's a really awesome amount of people to be tuning in. So thank you. This is the first of many Super Team DePIN events. We have an upcoming one in person. So anybody who's in Berlin, yeah, Gabe, Dirk, if you happen to be in Berlin in March, you're absolutely welcome to come. We're doing a DePIN dinner in person. So please register for that. We'll post the link in the on X. But yes, just again, like we'll close out with one sentence of advice you'd give to starting DePIN companies. Gabe, I'll have you kick it off.
You won't be surprised to hear me say it, but just be laser focused on building a real product that has real TAM for real customers, and all good things flow from knocking it out of the park on that. Please don't over-index on the token.
Amazing. Dirk.
So it comes down to the business model. You gotta make sense, right? We've been seeing so much DePIN product that actually the business model does not make sense. They're called DePIN. It's called DePIN not only because of the token incentives and hardware. It's called DePIN because of the infrastructure that actually has a lot of value, and you can share that value. So whenever you're trying to start with a DePIN project, you got to think again. Like if the business model makes sense, if your product has an actual product market fit.
Awesome. Thank you again. We're going to be ending the live stream here. Have a good night, good day, good morning. I know we're right now in all parts of the world, at least on the call. So yeah, take care.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
for
guys.
having us.